everybody. I'm Arielle Strong, a product manager here at Looker. And I work on the embedded analytics team, which we also call sometimes Powered by Looker. And with me, I have John Kaster, senior engineer on the team. And we're excited today to share some of our embedded analytics best practices with you. So by a quick show of hands, who in the room is embedding analytics in their product today? All right. And who is anybody considering embedding analytics in the future? Okay, good mix. And anybody just not even considering it, but curious what this is all about? Good, I like that.
Thank you for being honest.
All right, so we should have some good content, I think, for all levels, whether you're doing a lot of stuff today and are looking for some new tips and advanced options, or whether you're just getting started. All right. So what I thought we would do is start out with just a quick overview for the folks in the room who are maybe new to embedded analytics. We'll talk through a quick example in the wild of what something could look like in real life. John here is then going to give a demo of how to go from nothing to a fully embedded product in just a few minutes. We have some advanced examples to share with you, and then we're happy to take some questions at the end. Does that sound like a good agenda? Okay. Because I don't have a backup, so that's great. All right. So I thought we'd start out, quick overview. If there are any folks in the room new to Looker, welcome. But what Looker is we are a business intelligence platform that helps everybody in your organization explore, analyze, and share data. Now, in many scenarios, and very commonly do their job, so analytics is very embedded internally for them in their day-to-day workflow. But on the other side of the world, we also have business applications. So Looker, on one side, is a very robust business intelligence platform. But on the other side, we have business applications. And many of you may work for companies that build those things. Traditionally, business applications were things like CRMs, HR systems. They still are, but they can also now range across the board, things like e-commerce portals for partners to log in, marketing automation systems. But the key thing about business applications is that they're things that people use to do their jobs. They're very operational in nature. And the magic of embedded analytics is when you take the power of a full BI platform like Looker, and you marry that up with your very operational business platform. And what that does is it gives your users and your customers all of the power of data right at their fingertips the minute they need it when they're doing their jobs. Right. So embedded analytics with Looker. The reason we're pretty excited about this is that Looker is, when you use Looker, you get things out of the box like rich visualizations, a Git-controlled data model to manage your data, enterprise security, user management, and you get to take all of that goodness and put it inside the application that your customers already love. Which means that for you only have to focus on the data that is important and the insights and content that your customers are going to get the most value from. All right. So I have a quick example of what this actually looks like in the wild. I'll play it. Hopefully it doesn't start playing. OK. So by way of quick background, Counta is one of our recent customers. They just purchased Looker to start embedding analytics. And Counta, they are a cloud-based point-of-sale system. So let's imagine their customers are places like coffee shops, small businesses, and their customers purchase Counta so that they can check out the people buying their coffee and pastries and all those great things. Now, Counta realized that they had a lot of really valuable data. They had information for their customers, like what products were being purchased the most, when, where, which stores were being the most successful, or what times were they busy. And so they realized a need to give those insights back to their users. And so they started thinking about how they could integrate analytics into their product. And being that their main purpose is to be the best point-of-sale system, cloud-based point-of-sale, they decided they wanted to go with a third-party tool like Looker. And so this is about a 1.5-minute video that they actually developed for their customers to share with them this new offering called Counta Insights. So we're going to play that, again, just a 1.5 minutes, and then we'll talk through a few cool things they're doing, and then get into a couple of of good demos. So I think I can just...
You just click, yeah.
Right.
Welcome to Counter Insights. Decisions don't have to be a guess based on instinct or an hour-long mission to piece together data wherever it may be. Insights lets you quickly see your data from all of your companies and sites in one spot so you can make decisions faster and more confidently than ever without the manual effort. Always have a view of the metrics that matter and drill down to dig deeper into your data and find new ways to grow. Perspectives that previously would have been difficult and time-consuming to find are now accessible in just seconds. Whether it's at a site, staff, or product level, if you see a number of interest on any report, quickly click through to see what's going on. Powerful filters let you narrow down or open up your dataset, select specific sites, staff, products, and timeframes. Access all of your historical data in Insights to identify seasonal trends and plan for the year ahead. See your key metrics at a glance, and don't waste a minute building the reports you depend on, with a library of essential reports and dashboards. Keep your board, business partners, and staff in the know with scheduled reports that contain easy-to-read visualizations of your data. Send them weekly, monthly, or whenever you need. As you grow, so will Counter Insights. Find new reports and dashboards added to Insights regularly, giving you new perspectives and the right data to make the right call fast. If you have any questions, simply click on Help to find our support guides and our 24-hour support team. Thanks for watching this video on Counter Insights. Stay tuned.
All right. Okay, so some pretty cool stuff in there, and I thought we'd do a quick recap on a few of the things that I think are the most interesting about what Counta is doing. First and foremost, probably the most obvious part, is that they are taking dashboards that they built in Looker, and they're embedding that directly in their product. So they are really building everything. Their end users can do it. They're building dashboards just as they would in an internal scenario, and then they're able to just pop that right into their own product. Now, something that's kind of interesting about Counta is oftentimes business applications are web-based, but in their case, they're actually using an iPad to showcase this, because a lot of their customers are really using mobile applications. Something that is a little bit behind the scenes that they didn't really highlight, because this was for customers, but something that I get excited about, and I know they were excited about, is that they have hundreds, if not thousands, of customers using Counta. And they needed to provide very specific insights to each of them. They only needed to show the data to coffee shop A and not accidentally show customer B's data. And so while they built one or just a handful of dashboards for those multi-purposes, behind the scenes, they were really using Looker's permissioning scheme so that they only had to manage that one dashboard and let Looker handle the permissions and the security and showing the correct data. So it made it really easy for them to manage and roll out and scale as they onboarded many, many more customers. Right. And the last thing that I'll point out, you may have noticed it at the end, but in addition to just standard dashboards and getting insights, they also opened up some new capabilities to their customers, such as scheduling and downloading. So not only do their customers, are they able to come into their standard point of sale app, but they're also now able to get additional value by sending themselves recurring emails and reports so that they're going to get that information exactly when they need it. Maybe that's the close of the business day, maybe that's the close of a quarter, whatever it may be. Their customers now have that flexibility at their fingertips. Nope, not playing again. Unless you guys want to. All right, so I am going to turn it over to John, and let's imagine for the sake of this demo that John works for a company called Fashionly. Fashionly is an online e-commerce retailer. And what Fashionly does is they have different partners that sell products on their site. So different clothing brands like maybe Calvin Klein or Allegra K. And similar to Counta, John's company was like, we have a lot of really great information. What are buying trends? What are products? And they wanted to make that available to their end users. So John was tasked with this. And he's going to show us how he was able to start from nothing in Looker to getting up and running with a great product for their customers. So with that, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Arielle. All right, so again, so what we want to do is we want to embed a branded dashboard. We want this dashboard that we have in Looker right now to look like it belongs as part of the Fashionly website. So there's no difference in the fonts, there's no difference in the base color palette, and we want to modify a little bit of the way the dashboard looks when we have it in that embed context. So here is the page that we want to put it into. So this is the page that we're using for our prototype. And normally you would use an editor, you know, whatever you like to use for editing your HTML or your content management system for your site. But we're just going to hack right into the elements on this page just to keep this simple. So what I want to do is I want to replace that analytics here with the dashboard. And we're going to do that with an iframe. So iframes are a standard HTML feature, a standard browser feature that basically allows you to embed another website into your website. So we're going to take this iframe, we set an ID for it, it's just an HTML element. We're specifying what dashboard we want to use from Looker, what kind of border, the width, so we want it to go as big as it will fit inside the thing that's containing it, and a height of 1,000 pixels. So I'll just go ahead and do a little hack. And replace the HTML that was in there with that iframe. And then I'm using Chrome, and in Chrome, when you move out of that, you then get your dashboard. Let me resize this a little bit. So there you go. We've got the embedded dashboard on our HTML page. So as long as you know the secret of using the iframe declaration, you're all set. So there's a variety of problems with this. Number one, there's all this functionality that you may or may not want to give the user, because all I did was take my browser session and say, hey, stick it in this iframe. So the next thing we want to do is implement what we call SSO embed, a single sign-on. So one of our analysts built a tool to help our customers do this embed scenario. And so here's the link to it. I already have the site open here. In the admin page for Looker, security is an important part of what we do. So there's a place where you can specify the embed secret to use that is basically the key that allows you to embed. So that becomes part of an encrypted URL that goes into this built embed URL thing here. So this whole web page here is just a tool to help you construct the URL to stuff into that iframe. Okay? So we break up the URL, so we specify where the host is. We specify what the thing is that's on that site, the path, the embed path, and then an external user ID that you can use to associate that user for their single sign-on to whatever other system. So like if you had a different employee ID or a different GUID that you were using for that customer, you could specify it in that external user ID so that you could always have an association from Looker's instantly created account to your external account. And then, of course, Testy McTestface is the name of the user. And so there are a variety of permissions to grant, but what we're going to do right now is we're just going to use this tool to verify that we actually get the embed. And there you go. So we have our Business Pulse dashboard. So some of the things you'll notice that are different is like over here with the there's no gear, there's no edit, there's no explore icon. So like I can still do explore from here, all these edit things. So what I can do now, because the single sign-on sessions are one-time use, we'll regenerate the URL by unclicking preview, selecting the embed URL. I'm going to copy and paste it back in here. We'll go back to that iframe. And now I just want to take this reasonably short URL and put in this nice and long URL. And so when we look at it now, we see that all of those other attributes, all of those other pieces of functionality are no longer part of this embed iframe. So there are a bunch of other rights that we may want to grant, other permissions we may want to grant to the consumers of this page. Like Arielle was saying, customers might want to schedule delivery of the information that's in the dashboard. They might want to be able to download it and create a snapshot that they then share, for that point in time. So we can easily add those things by adding capabilities. So I want to have all of the same rights that I had before. I want to add the ability to explore, to save content, and schedule emails, for example, and download. So now, again, rather than having to go back and forth and generate the URL and test it again, I can actually do all of those things here, make sure that everything works the way I'm expecting. I can do explore from here. I can click on the gear, everything that we want to have. Okay, it looks great, so I'll generate that URL again and go back and paste it in. This is a little longer this time. So what's happening with this URL is all of the settings that we are specifying are becoming part of this URL. And the URL is encrypted using the Embed Secret key so that when the iframe passes in that URL, Looker will decrypt those arguments so that you still have a secure, even though this is a URL, the URL has been encrypted to keep that session as secure as possible. And now we have basically restored all of the things that we had before, but now I am no longer the original user that I was when I was designing the site. I'm now an SSO user. Okay? So that was to get us to the rights that we want to be able to have so that that user has all the operations that we want to enable. Now we realize there are some other key performance indicators that we haven't provided that we want to provide, and one of them is information on age demographics. So I go back to the original dashboard, edit, add a new tile, and what I want to get is the age tier, gender, and then the count of people in that group. We'll call this age demographics for the tile, if I can type in a demo. And so now we'll run this, and that really doesn't add any value to me. So what I want to do now is create one of the custom visualizations that we also talked about earlier today. You heard SandKey mentioned. So I have configured SandKey on here using the admin interface for that. And if we have time, I can show you where that is, but it's really not that complicated. So now we have our graphic that gives us a really pleasing interface for understanding how the age demographics go across male and female genders. So we'll save that. That's put into our age demographics. And now that's, if we just go back to the Fashionly site, actually, let me just do it here first, and we'll preview again. And now you have age demographics showing in this embed preview, so that would be so we can take that URL, update it. So one of the things, I almost made a mistake and hit refresh, and that would have just wiped out my whole iframe declaration, and we would have had to start over. So that was why I went back and regenerated the key, because now when I edit this element, Chrome will say, oh, okay, that's a different URL, so I need to reload. Here. All right. So drop back out of that, and now we have our age demographic showing on there as well. So there's an iterative process you can do, and you can extend it a variety of ways, add the custom visualization. So the last part before I give it back to Arielle for a minute is I want to talk about how we can brand it with, to make it, remember I mentioned that you could change the font, make it look more like what you wanted. We are not going to use wingdings for the custom font, but what we do have, because actually if I go back to the original site and refresh that page, I'll have issues because I'm also in SSO session in the same browser, so I've copied the same settings over to one of our hackathon servers for themes. Okay, there they are. So we created Join Light and Join Dark, which are themes that we can use to show drastically different appearances here. So this is one of the new features that was added in the last month or two. So we have support for not just a font family, but specifying a custom font that you want to use. So this is a standard web feature. You can specify a location for a custom font to be downloaded and applied. And then all of these other settings are all part of what you can do, whether or not you want to show a dashboard tile by default, show a filter bar by default. If any of you have used the Embed dashboard customization feature, this has all of that functionality, except it applies to all dashboards, and then it adds the ability to override fonts as well. So what we'll do is go back to the SSO Embed constructor, and I want to put the name of the theme, which is Join Light. And now the font matches what we want for that Fashionly site. So if we look back here, you'll see that that's a sans serif font, and this is a serif font. And then there's one more thing that we want to be able to do when we customize this site. We want the host environment to be able to control what goes on in the iframe. So that was something that you saw in that Counta demo and other things, where they had an embedded iframe, and then the user would click outside of that iframe and things would happen. So the last thing we want to do is we want to be able to whitelist this site, because you need to tell the dashboard or the iframe that you are allowing communication between what's embedded in the iframe and what comes outside of the iframe. So we have an API for the, we call iframe events, and I'm just going to add Fabio at Looker. So we just take that same domain and put it in there, and in order to show what those events are, I'm going to add them here. Here, let's put this over here. Okay, so I've got it. I've put the embed domain in there, and now if I do a preview and hit go, what you actually see, these little red things here, those are our iframe events. So page changed, properties changed, dashboard is running, tile is loading, tile, properties changed. All of those things are ways of communicating through the iframe via JavaScript, so that you can talk back and forth between what is going on in your Looker iframe embedded instance and your external web server. Okay, I think that was all I
think, yeah.
wanted to show for that part.
Thanks, John.
All right, thanks.
All right. That was awesome. So quick recap. So we just saw John go from essentially a dashboard he built in Looker to embedding it into his website or product in just a few steps. And there's a lot you can do there. You can really add on permissions incrementally. There's obviously SSO embedding for all of that security stuff we talked about. And then he also showed you how now with Looker 6, you can really make Looker match your brand. Because when you're embedding Looker into your product, you want all the goodness of Looker. You don't want to go and build all of those visualizations, but you don't want your customers to necessarily know that it's a different product. Cool, and here's just a couple quick screenshots, just more type of the custom themes things that you can do. But what we'll do next is we're gonna build off of what John just did, and I have a few more advanced examples to show you how you can really start to take Looker even further and take your application to the next step. So John started with a pretty simple Fashionly site for his customers, which started getting a lot of traction, was awesome. And what we've done is we built that out a bit more. So here's a little bit more full-fledged application and customer portal. Now what John went through was very much what this is here, which is a dashboard, a very standard out-of-the-box dashboard embedded into that product. But there's a lot more that we can start to do with Looker. So one of the things that's really unique about Fashionly in our excellent e-commerce product is that we have a very standard way that we organize the various pages. We have a UI similar to this filter bar that we use in a lot of different areas, and not necessarily just on the analytics page. And so what we wanted to do was, Looker's filters are great, no lie, but they didn't quite match our application. And so using those JavaScript events that John just showed you, how you can communicate with the iframe, one thing you're able to do is take off pieces of Looker that you don't want and build your own pieces that you do want. So like this filter bar, got here. This filter bar was something that was native to our app. And using Looker's JavaScript events, what you'll notice is as I interact with that native filter bar, Looker is also seamlessly updating. That's us pushing a JavaScript event into the iframe and saying, hey, this user in this other part of the application clicked on something. I want you to now update as well. Now, another thing that started happening once we released this to our customers is we started getting a lot of requests. People really liked the data. They're like, this is really useful. Now I know what people are buying. And they started asking for a lot more reports. And so we didn't want to have to keep building a report in Looker, involving our development team, like John, although you're great. We wanted to keep you out of it. So we wanted a new way, we wanted a different way to be able to provide a lot of reports and continuously add those into the product. And so using Looker's API, so all I'm going to do is turn on show sources to really highlight what's going on here. But what we did is on the right-hand side, there's a list of reports. Now, what's actually happening is that is an API call using Looker's REST API. So we talked this morning about 110% API coverage. And what we've done is we created a folder or a space in Looker where all of the folks at our company that know customers the best, whether they're our customer success managers, product managers, in marketing, they're able to create dashboards or looks, put them into that space, and then this API call here in our application picks up when that changes and adds a new one to the list. So now when my user comes in, they can select the one they want. We're still leveraging Looker's iframe to really take a lot of the load of building the visualization off our plate. But now I have a much more dynamic and interactive experience that's going to help us scale as we start adding more and more content to the product. One last thing I'll share with everybody, and then I will pass this back off to John, I promise. Oops, didn't mean to run this again. So with our permissions, like John showed, as you add permissions, one of those is Explore. So if you start getting a lot of customers, they want more and more value, you can actually embed the entire Explore page for them to use, which is awesome. Also recognize that depending on the users you're working with, some of them might really dig into this, and some of them might be like, that's a little much, and you want to provide a more curated experience. So again, using a combination of Looker's API and iframes, we can actually create really curated experiences where instead of the entire Explore, I'm using the API to select a handful of the most important fields. Like in this case, we've got user count, and we're able to filter and slice that by gender and time. And we can actually rebuild our own interactive ad hoc experience here on the page. So there's a lot we can start to do by starting out simple, but then continuously adding on additional value and adding more unique experiences into the product. So John here is going to share a little, on a more technical level, how you can actually get set up with the API today and start to do some of these things.
Thanks, Arielle. All right. So one of the things that is in every Looker instance that you have right now is the API Explorer, or the, I think it's the API Docs browser. So I'm going to open 2 instances of it. I was not involved in the keynote this morning, and I was like, oh man, they stole some of the stuff I'm going to show. But actually, I was pretty happy about it. So one of the things we did earlier this year, so we have an experimental API, which is a 3.1 version of the API, and it is supported. It does work. We have all the testing around it that you would expect to have around, full unit testing, full test coverage. Experimental means it's subject to change. We're still working on things, figuring out, like one of the things I personally would like to do is make a filter API that applies across all of anything that can be filtered, so that it is exactly the same filter experience from the API endpoint side. But one of the things I did earlier this year was making some things that had previously been hidden public and adding a few more things, just a couple more, to the dashboard API. So this was a screenshot that might have gone by pretty fast earlier. So this is the 3.0 version of the API Explorer for the dashboard API, and then here's the 3.1 version. So we had in 3.0, you could create a dashboard. Yeah, I got a dashboard. You couldn't do anything else with it, really, but you could create one. So you can now do everything that you want to do to manipulate the dashboard, do all operations on it, and all management of it from here. So for example, update dashboard is one of the functions that we made available that's in beta under the 3.1. So I just quickly wanted to show, if you wanted to query things, find out things, you can use the API Explorer. If you log in up at the top where it has client ID and client source up here, that creates a session for you in this API Explorer, and then you can put in whatever values you want to try here and then click the try it out button. So if you wanted to just understand what the API was doing, this is a great way to just get started in doing it. So once we had this dashboard stuff, one of our analysts, who is not on the engineering team, so one of the proofs of concept is to be able to use the API to do more, to do custom things that you want to do. So he created this open source public utility called Gazer, Gazer, Looker, you get it. So what's really neat about Gazer is it's a very intentional system. So here's, you can type Gazer help. He is wrapped up, he's using the Ruby SDK, so this Gazer is written in Ruby as well, but there's actually capabilities that go beyond the API where he's made difficult things really simple. And so various options that you have for Gazer are shown here. In the interest of time, I'll just run through, I'll just talk about a couple of them and then show you one example that's really cool. So, well, maybe 2 examples. Let's take this one. And what this allows me to do is get information about the spaces that are on my server. So you set up your, there's instructions in Gazer to set up how you have your client access, your access rights. So by making this very easy call, I'm able to get a visual representation of what things are in my space. And then the really fun one is this one. So that same dashboard that we're using here, oh gosh, where is that dashboard? It's moved all the way over. All right, the map, the dashboard, wait, I can show right here. What do you know? Let me close this. So right here, this query is query ID 369. And I know that because I used Gazer to dump out the information about this dashboard. And so now I'm going to say, I want you to run the query associated with query ID 369 on this host. I want the format for the query that you run to be in PNG, and the file I want you to produce is called map.png. So what happens is Gazer will go and find that query ID, see which dashboard it's associated with, see what the visualization is for that tile, the configuration, the visualization for that tile, apply that visualization, make it a PNG, and download it to that file. So now, there it is. Right? So we have had customers already putting the things that you could, there's a whole bunch more Gazer can do, but we have customers already putting that into their workflow. So that's the point where you're at the API, where you don't have anything visual, you're not doing any UI interactive visual customization. You're completely automating part of your business processes using Looker as an engine or as a data platform. And then the last thing I wanted to show is Look-R. We're as fond of puns as anybody else in the industry. So Look-R is the SDK for R language for Looker, for data science. And another one of our analysts, actually an analyst in the Department of Customer Love, has done a fantastic job with that. And I'm going to go back to a slide where I've got the demonstration to show. So what, cool. So this is running in our studio, and this is connecting to the definitions that are on the Looker server for the connections that are available. It's grabbing the schema and making it look like it's a database to R. So all of the things that you would use in RStudio for exploring that schema and running queries, being able to run inline events, get the results into the data format that R will recognize so that you can do your data science and do your business analysis it's just a matter of running, downloading the SDK, installing it into R, and you're up and running. So we've gone from very basic visual, just stick an iframe tag in there, all the way down to you can build anything you want using the SDK with Looker as that BI engine or that data platform for you. That's it for me.
Yeah, and one of the, Awesome. Yeah, so just to kind of wrap up on the API points, you can, again, use our iframe API to build really seamless integrations between your product. You can use our REST API to just add additional functionality, automate processes, and the stuff that you showed with Look-R is really cool, because even if, maybe this is an additional or instead of actually showing the data to your customers, but you can still leverage Looker to even do things like run machine learning and algorithms and take the output and use that to feed some of the insights in your platform and really use it as a part of your application, even if it's the calculation engine and not in a visual way.
So all of your model, again, is driving R. So all of the data integrity and business rules that you've put into the model are just consumed directly in R.
Yeah. All right.